Hey everyone, this is my screencast for Module 2 about Common Science Misconceptions for ACTE 651 at Millersville University. For my common misconception, I chose to focus on a middle school student as that's the level that I teach. After doing research and reading through some of the different readings in Module 2, I decided to focus on the misconception that middle schoolers have in which they do not believe that human actions impact an ecosystem or an environment. As described by Jody Fairbanks, quote, most students think that they themselves are not part of ecosystems. Many children view the lives of humans as separate and different from those of plants, animals, and microorganisms, end quote. However, we know that each living creature is unique, but they all share common needs and characteristics. All species, including humans, live and interact in ecosystems. So that's the basis of this preconception. I would introduce this lesson or activity through a short story called A Sound of Thunder by Ray Bradbury. In this story, a man goes back in time on a dinosaur hunting expedition. There's just two rules. He must stay on the path, which is magically suspended about 6 inches above the ground, and he can only shoot what his guides tell him to. The man doubts the importance of staying on the path, and the story follows the consequences of his disobedient actions. In using this story, the teacher can use the predict, explain, observe, revise model described by Fouche in the module readings. Using this model, the teacher can read the first part of the story, then ask the students to make a prediction as to what they think would happen if the person does not stay on the path and explain their reasoning. Then as the class reads the story or alternately watches it in a TV film, a 26-minute TV film or YouTube feature film, they can record observations and update the predictions as they go and they learn more information. So now that students have been somewhat introduced to this preconception and have somewhat understood that human actions do impact an ecosystem or environment, it's now time to take a look at this in a more modern lens. For this, I would use an activity from PBS Learning Media titled Human Impact on Wildlife. This lesson also can follow the predict, explain, observe, revise cycle described by Fouche. In the predict phase, students are asked the questions, what are some of the ways you impact wildlife in your neighborhood? They could be asked to respond to this orally, to write an answer, to draw a picture, and any of the different ways that support that prediction. And they're also asked to explain that. The class would have a short discussion about this, and then the teacher would show an introductory video. In the observe phase, students would be placed into groups of 5 to 7, and they would work in a jigsaw fashion. Each one of those students would become an expert on a specific habitat. They would research that habitat with other experts from other groups to fill out the worksheet about observations and impacts and mitigation that you see on the screen there. They would then go back to their original groups, and each expert would share out in their own habitat, and students would fill out their worksheets to learn more about these different habitats that are being explored. Depending on where the teacher wanted to take it then, obviously the students are going to make some initial conclusions. They're going to share out with their groups. They're going to revise conclusions to share that with the class. But this lesson also builds in opportunities for students to elaborate on and research other topics on mitigation and create a presentation for the class. This lesson and activity activates student preconceptions about their role on the environment and ecosystems and allows them the opportunity to engage with this preconception through literature and culminates in an activity where students analyze and research human impacts on an ecosystem. By the end of the lesson, students should be able to begin to explain how all human actions have an impact on an ecosystem, even if they may not be able to easily be seen or identified.